Sword and Shield controversy!
Hey ho, if you want to know my full thoughts on the whole matter of nat decks and whatnot, I already have a video all about that here, so check it out. In this video, I'm going to explain an idea on how Game Freak could optimize their animation process to make the animations significantly more unique and expressive, but without completely overloading themselves on work. This idea spawned from a few things. One being the non-argument of, well, if you think the animations are so bad, why don't you make them yourself? So while I won't be doing that, a lot of other people already have, and it's fairly easy. This guy remade Game Freak's tail whip animation in just a few seconds. Literal seconds. Then, in as little as 40 minutes, which is not very long in terms of game development time, made Pikachu have a unique, fun, and expressive animation instead of just its idle pose moving 30 degrees. And he's just a student, so imagine what a professionally trained career animator could do with enough time, resources, and care. But that's a lot of what that previously mentioned video goes over, and besides, even if, say, we gave every Pokemon a unique animation for every move, though a lot of them could still be somewhat copies of each other, like, say, Ice Punch and Fire Punch have the same animation, just with a few different particle effects. That's still a lot of work. Pokemon learn on average 58 moves each. Now let's just say each move takes an hour to animate, since some moves are more complicated than others, and some could just be copies of others. Let's just leave it at that. This means that for 1,000 or so Pokemon, and each of their forms, well, the math is easy, 58,000 hours. Japanese labor law states that a full-time employee works 40 hours a week, so a single animator then should be able to fully animate a single Pokemon in a week or two, though this isn't including Pokemon refresh animations. The average salary of a 3D animator in Japan varies wildly, but most of my research is leading me towards an average of about 3.5 million yen per year. Convert that to US dollars and it's about $32,000. There are no official numbers out, but it is estimated that Pokemon X and Y, as well as Sun and Moon, cost around $20 million to make. And XY wound up grossing about $640 million through game sales alone. What I'm getting at is that they can easily afford to hire more animators to give every Pokemon a unique animation for every attack they can learn. But is that necessary? Is the question that comes up. And no, it's not. We've been relatively okay with a few handfuls of animations. Every Pokemon has a physical attack animation, a special attack animation, a getting hit animation, a walking animation, a fainting animation, a coming out of the Pokeball animation, an idle stance, where they look incredibly idle, like as if they aren't even battling or have a soul, and sometimes in the battle mode there are some with a few more. And so far, we've been fine with this. But the jump from the 3DS handheld console era to a home console HD era led many to get their hopes up. And when they excused cutting who knows how many Pokemon from the game as, it's so we can make the animations better, a lot of people weren't happy when they then saw that the animations were the same. A lot of people are upset because we still haven't seen much of those improvements. Granted, both sides of the argument are cherry-picking things to death, but still, I feel that a lot of people may have expected a unique animation for every attack, or at least every category of attack, like a punch, kick, vine whip, water coming out of cannons, or fire coming out of the mouth. But I don't think we need to be that extreme. The first part. The latter should honestly be fully expected by any company that makes more than 3 cents. I feel like there's a middle ground here that most fans want. And that wouldn't be too much of a burden on Game Freak because it already falls in line with the way that Game Freak does battle animations. By which I mean, the moves are the animation, not the Pokemon. I mean, take the infamous double kick or tail whip, for example. They are an easy example of this. Game Freak doesn't always animate the Pokemon. They animate the move and set that animation to every Pokemon. As far as programming goes, tail whip says, take the model, rotate it in this way back and forth, and then return to default. Then, for instance, some of the more complicated moves will say, take the model, play the special attack animation, and rotate the model in this way at the same time while having this particle effect appear. And that, for a lot of moves, is perfectly fine looking. But for others, Like this. It's really not. But then to give every Pokemon a fully unique animation for every learnable attack, while technically doable easily with the money they make, is still asking for a lot more work than necessary, and is also asking for a complete reworking of their battle system. Meaning, at that point, the animation would be in the Pokemon rather than in the moves. That's not how they do things. But I think there is a pretty decently obvious way around this, so let's go over that. Step 1, just add a little more variety. Let's have, say, 2 or 3 physical attack animations and 2 or 3 special attack animations. Depending on the Pokemon, this could look like a punch, a kick, and a tackle, or a tackle, a rollout, and a headbutt, or a bite, a swipe, and a body slam, because obviously not every Pokemon punches and kicks. Then for special attacks you can do the same. For example, for some psychic types I could see a special attack animation where they hold their head, as well as one where they launch some sort of blast from their mind, or extended hand. A lot of Pokemon would get breath attack animations, or one where they shake about, exerting themselves. This small change already would make all of their attacks look significantly better on an individual level. And then, each Pokemon, or at least every final evolution, could have one unique animation to themselves, either for their signature move, meaning a move only they can learn, or just something really iconic about them. For instance, Blastoise shooting water out of its freaking cannons! Then you could give every Pokemon a self-status animation, like when they are doing something to buff themselves. All in all, rather than multiplying the amount of work they have to do by 50 plus times, it's multiplying the amount of work they have to do just a dozen or so times, which is a lot simpler. But we can go deeper. So as it stands, the moves work the way I explained earlier. The move happens, and the program says take the model while doing this animation and move the whole thing this way. But get this, we could go deeper with that same programming method and start specifying specific parts. Though of course this would mean going into the model's skeleton rigs and categorizing the different parts, which most of them already are. The fun fact is that Palkia's wings are categorized as whiskers. With this, we could perhaps specify parts like left arm, head, or tail. So instead of Tail Whip just turning the whole model around and shaking it 30 degrees, it could turn the model around and then take the predefined tail and wag it around too. Considering that the move is a playful taunt, you could also have the ears defined and wiggle them. Better yet, you could change the expression on the Pokemon's face. With this idea in mind, Game Freak could keep their current system of animation, meaning it's mostly set to the move rather than the model's preset animations themselves. Some moves would even utilize those animations in different parts. For example, that terrible Xerneas Z move I showed you earlier would be significantly better if Xerneas, at the very least, did a walking animation instead of its idle pose the whole time. So instead of always idle pose, this attack could simply say, hey, switch from the idle pose to the walking animation, and then take the idle pose and tilt it side to side. Maybe have the head predefined, tilt side to side more to give it a tiny bit more animation. You know? Or better yet, have it do a sped up version of its physical attack animation at the very end. But taking away that last bit, even just that, is using assets they already have, but it's already way better. Here's another example. A move could be defined as extend left arm forward in a punch animation while making face angry and rotating the model 30 degrees. Using Swords Dance, move the model this way while also moving arms and legs this way and moving the tail this way, bobbing its head this way. It's all still predefined in the move. They wouldn't have to animate the Pokemon individually like they already don't. It's there. Though, of course, because Pokemon come in a large variety of shapes, this method wouldn't work for every Pokemon. Which one of Tentacruel's arms is the left one? Or are they legs? Though, when it comes to programming something like this, it's relatively simple. Programming is entirely yes, no, true, false, after all. Does this model have a tail? If no, ignore tail command. If yes, execute tail command. So all of these left arm, left hand, left leg commands would be there, but there would also be commands for fins, which would be animated differently than an arm, obviously. Is there an arm? No, ignore arm command. Is there a fin? Yes, execute fin animation. And all this figuring out what the Pokemon does and does not have happens in microseconds, so all the animations still play at once, and it looks just better because it's like it's alive or something. It would even work for Voltorb thanks to this. It would probably just wind up doing whatever the default animation is though, because it's got nothing. But at the very least it could wiggle and change its facial expression. And obviously not every attack would be as intense as this. A lot of them can simply just play the default attack animation like they already do. But I think a system like this would be a decent compromise. Though having 3 physical and 3 special attack animations per Pokemon would still be better. Well, that and perhaps having parameters in place so that water comes out of Blastoise's cannons and fire comes out of Pokemon mouths that breathe fire. It should be easy. Like, instead of programming Flamethrower just appears out the front of the model, maybe have a defined height using the same system we just talked about. You can define at what point in the model certain animations come out of, like Flamethrower is programmed to come out of the moving mouth during a special attack animation. It's really not that complicated. Just more work on the rigging and modeling side of things. But what do you think? Because obviously I'm just an armchair developer here. I do know plenty of programming and have dabbled in modeling, but the most game development I've done is Smash Bros. And Skyrim mod making. Also Snake. I made Snake in class. Snake is actually super simple. So, yeah. This was a passing thought, and I figured I'd talk about it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, please remember to never stop using your noggin. And check out the Tauros plush! It's from the Sitting Cuties line? Oh my word! I've never seen a Tauros that looked cute! It's so cute! Ah.